before the world knew his name, before the charts, the awards, the global dominance. There was silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that sits inside a room and makes you think too much, the kind that shapes people before the world even meets them. In Toronto, Canada, a boy named Aubrey Drake Graham was growing up in that silence, a city full of movement outside. But inside his world, things were slower, heavier, more personal. He was born into two different realities trying to exist in one life. His father lived outside the home, present at times but not constant, not fully rooted in the day-to-day life of raising him. That absence created something in him early, awareness. Not anger first, awareness. Because when a child notices who is not there, he also learns how to observe everything else more deeply. But the foundation of his life was his mother, Sandi Graham, a woman who carried responsibilities that were never designed for one person alone. She was working, managing life, and raising a son in a world that didn't pause for struggle. There was no luxury in their environment, no comfort of financial stability, just consistency built on discipline and sacrifice. And Drake saw all of it. Even when he didn't fully understand it at the time, it stayed inside him. Because children don't always remember words. They remember atmosphere. And his atmosphere was survival mixed with love. That combination builds a certain type of personality. Quiet, thoughtful, always thinking ahead. At school, Drake wasn't the loudest presence. He wasn't the strongest in the room. He wasn't trying to dominate attention or compete for popularity. Instead, he watched people. How they spoke, how they moved, how they tried to fit in. And while others were trying to be seen, he was trying to understand what being seen even meant. That mindset separated him early. But separation is not always a weakness. Sometimes it becomes the foundation of originality. Inside that quiet personality, something began forming. It started with writing. Simple thoughts at first, then emotional expressions, then structured rhythm. He didn't know it yet, but he was slowly building a relationship with language that would later define his entire career. But before music fully entered his life, another door opened. Acting. Not because he planned it as a career, but because life sometimes gives unexpected exits when you're still trying to find direction. That door led him into a Canadian teen drama series called Degrassi, The Next Generation. For the first time, he stepped into a world where cameras followed him, scripts guided him, and audiences watched him. He became recognizable, not as a superstar, but as a character. Still, that experience mattered, because it introduced him to performance, to discipline, to storytelling in visual form. But even while acting, something inside him was still unsettled, because acting gave him a role, but not identity. He was playing someone else, while still trying to understand himself. Outside the set, life remained unchanged. Back home, things were still tight. Bills still existed. Responsibilities still pressed down on the household. And his mother continued to carry the weight of keeping everything stable. Drake saw that contrast clearly. On one side, a television world with lights and scripts. On the other, real life with pressure and limitation. That contrast created tension inside him. And tension creates direction. Because when two worlds don't align, the mind starts searching for a third one. For Drake, that third world became music. At first, it wasn't professional. It wasn't polished. It wasn't even considered a career path yet. It was private expression. Late nights became his space of freedom. Small rooms became his studio. Basic equipment became enough. Because he wasn't trying to impress anyone yet. He was trying to understand himself. And that honesty gave his early music something powerful, authenticity without awareness of audience. But the music industry does not immediately recognize authenticity, especially when it comes from someone still seen as an actor. So when Drake started sending his music out, the response was not immediate acceptance. It was mostly silence. Sometimes rejection. Sometimes no response at all. And that kind of silence can change a person. Because rejection still acknowledges your existence. Silence makes you feel invisible. But Drake didn't stop. Not because he was confident yet, But because stopping would mean returning to uncertainty without direction. So he continued. He recorded more. He wrote more. He improved without validation. That phase of his life built something crucial, persistence without reward. And that is a rare stage in any success story, because most people quit before they ever reach that point of unseen growth. While this was happening, something important was forming in hip-hop without anyone fully realizing it. A shift toward emotional honesty. A space where vulnerability could exist inside rap. And Drake was unknowingly building his voice inside that shift. He was not trying to be the loudest artist. He was trying to be the most real. But the world had not caught up to that idea yet, until one moment changed everything. In the southern United States, a young superstar was listening to music from rising artists. Lil Wayne. At first, Drake's music was just another submission in a sea of sounds. But something about it stood out. It wasn't just flow. It wasn't just lyrics. It was emotion. It felt personal in a way that was uncommon in mainstream rap at the time. Lil Wayne didn't just hear talent. He heard identity. He heard someone who wasn't copying the industry, but creating something slightly different from it. That recognition was the turning point. A call was made, then another. And suddenly, Drake's world began shifting from outside the industry to inside it. He was no longer just sending music into silence. Now he was being invited into conversation. That invitation led him to a new environment. Young Money Entertainment. A place where ambition was not rare. It was expected. Inside Young Money, Drake was surrounded by artists who already had recognition, confidence, and industry experience. At first, he was not the center of attention. He was the newcomer, the one learning how the system works from the inside. But that position gave him something important: perspective. He saw how success operates when it is already established. He studied the structure behind hits. He understood the pressure behind fame. And slowly, he started adapting. Confidence didn't appear overnight. It developed through exposure, through observation, through repetition, and through belonging to something larger than himself. From that point onward, Drake was no longer just an unknown artist from Toronto. He was part of a movement that was already shaping modern music. But this was still only the beginning of transformation, because being inside the industry is not the same as conquering it. And the world was still waiting to fully hear him. The next phase would change everything. When Drake entered the world of Young Money, nothing about his life stayed the same. But at first, the change was not visible from the outside. Because inside the industry, success does not arrive as one moment. It arrives as pressure, expectation, and constant testing. Young Money Entertainment was not just a label. It was a system built around momentum. A place where artists were expected to evolve fast or be left behind. Drake was no longer an outsider sending music into silence. Now he was inside the machine. But being inside did not mean being established. It meant being evaluated. Every verse mattered. Every collaboration mattered. Every decision was part of how he would be defined. And that weight was new. But Drake had already built something most artists never develop early enough: emotional endurance. He had already survived rejection. He had already survived silence. So pressure, while intense, did not break him. It shaped him. And inside that environment, something important began to happen. His identity started to sharpen. He was no longer trying to fit into what rap was expected to sound like. He was slowly defining what it could sound like. A blend of melody and vulnerability, confidence and confession, ambition and honesty. That combination was not common at the time, and that is why it stood out. Behind the scenes, another structure supported this rise. Cash Money Records, a label known for power, consistency, and dominance in the industry. Inside that system, expectations increased even more. Because now Drake was not only representing himself, he was representing a brand, a movement, a business machine that demanded results. And that pressure created tension, but also focus. Because when expectations rise, distractions often fall away. Drake responded by refining everything. His writing became more intentional. His delivery became more controlled. His sound became more recognizable. And slowly, the industry started noticing something important. This was not just another new artist. This was someone building a new lane. At first, recognition came quietly. A feature here, a reaction there. Then mixtapes started spreading further than expected. People weren't just listening, they were repeating lines, sharing songs, connecting emotionally. And that is when music stops being content and starts becoming culture. Then came a shift, the moment where recognition became momentum. Songs began climbing beyond niche audiences. Radio started picking up his sound. Online platforms started amplifying his reach. And suddenly, Drake was no longer rising. He was breaking through. The transition from underground recognition to mainstream presence is one of the most fragile stages in any artist's life. Many disappear here. Many lose identity here. Many get consumed by expectation here. But Drake did something different. He leaned further into what made him unique. Instead of becoming harder, he became more emotional. Instead of hiding vulnerability, he amplified it. And that decision changed the direction of modern music. Because at that time, hip-hop was still heavily dominated by hardness, dominance, and external confidence. Drake introduced something different. Internal emotion as strength. And audiences connected with it faster than expected. Because it reflected real human experience. Success is not just about sound. It is about timing. And Drake arrived at a moment where the audience was ready for something new. As his presence grew, the scale of everything around him expanded. From studio sessions to global performances. From small recognition to international attention. From local influence to worldwide discussion. The rise was no longer regional. It was global. And soon, the stage became larger than anything he had experienced before. Crowds that once numbered in hundreds turned into thousands. Then tens of thousands. Then stadiums filled with voices singing lyrics he once wrote alone in silence. That contrast became one of the most powerful symbols of his journey. A boy who once recorded in quiet rooms, now standing in front of oceans of sound. But even at the peak of rising fame, Drake remained connected to something deeper. His origin. Because success can change environment. But it does not erase memory. There are moments in every successful life where everything slows down internally. When lights fade, when noise disappears, when you are alone with your thoughts again. And in those moments, the mind returns home, back to Toronto, back to early struggles, back to the presence of a mother who carried everything when life was uncertain. Sandi Graham remains central in that reflection. Because behind every achievement, there is a foundation that made survival possible. And Drake's foundation was built on resilience, discipline, and emotional awareness shaped early in life. As his career expanded, so did his influence. He was no longer just an artist. He became a reference point for a new generation of music creators. A symbol of blending vulnerability with ambition. A symbol of turning emotional truth into global sound. But legacy is not built instantly. It is built through repetition. Through consistency, through evolution, and through time. From Toronto silence, to Young Money transformation, to Cash Money power, to global stages. Drake's story is not just a rise. It is a continuous expansion. Because even at the top, the journey does not feel finished. It only feels larger. And somewhere inside that growth, the boy from the beginning is still there. Not gone. Just transformed, and still moving forward.